As always, we start with samples. What is that, Fred?
Isn't this strange? We see it's a cylinder, it's hollow, it's made of mud, and often we'll see these around ponds, and if Dennis were here, Dennis Ferraro, he would tell us that they're caused by crayfish. And the crayfish come up because it's too moist, and they form these little mud tubes, all right? And so we were actually cleaning out one of our drawers in the extension lab, and we came across this box. We thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Why would they have these? Because these go back a number of years. It turns out that periodical cicadas, those are the 17-year cicadas, also make tubes like this. And these actually came from 1998, which was the last time that the 17-year cicadas were in Gage County. All right? So it was 1998, and that means that they're going to be coming back in 2015. So we're all excited about that because when they come by the hundreds of thousands in a given area. It's loud and it's just plain fun.
Very cool.
And the other thing I'm just going to show everyone what they look like. So these little cicadas that are kind of have red eyes and red wings, black bodies, and just kind of fun.
2015.
So 2015, this is brood 4, and so last time we saw them was in 1998.
Pretty cool. Thanks, Fred.
16 years under the ground.
Okay, rock. That's
not a weed.
It's
It's useful. So it's a time of year where people are getting out and about and they're getting into these wooded areas, which is a great thing to do. And some people are hypersensitive to ground diving. It's starting to come on. I've seen it in a couple places. This is the only product I know that you put on preventative to going out, especially if you're hypersensitive to ground ivy or poison oak or poison sumac, right? So it's called Ivy Block, really kind of a interesting name. And the only place I've seen it is at ivyblock.com. But it's actually tested. I've seen it in a number of actually published articles about how effective it is with people, and they put it on, they go out, they don't seem to be affected by all the poison little broadleaf species that are out there. So great little product, easy to use. You wipe it on, you go out in the field. Some of us aren't hypersensitive, so we don't worry about it as much. But for those of you that are, it's a great idea. It's preventative, and then you don't get the itches.
So I'm guessing you meant to say poison ivy, not ground ivy?
Well, because, you got mad at me because I didn't have a weed sample.
Okay, Amy, thanks.
Poison ivy. Thank you for correcting me in front of all our fans.
Amy was going to, but I beat her to it.
Yeah.
Okay, Amy.
What are you doing with that pear plant?
I know, pear plant, it's an apple plant. I brought in something totally different. I actually brought something in pretty tonight. What I brought in is apple blossoms. I actually had a hard time finding some nice looking apple blossoms here in Lincoln right before the show because of the storm that came through last night. But our fruit trees are blooming. It's a great time to start looking at our fruit tree spray schedules for all of our fungicides and insecticides at this point in time. A lot of the products are going to say you start spraying after petal drop, which makes it a little hard to determine has petal drop occurred when all the wind has blown them off. But usually you're going to be, once they start blooming, usually within a week or two, you're going to start those applications. So best time to start wiping off all those dusty manuals and looking at your fungicide collection and get your sprayers ready to go for those fruit trees.
Excellent. Thanks, Amy. All right, Kelly, something beautiful on your end, too.
Yes, I have something beautiful, too. This is one of the viburnums. There's numerous viburnums out there. This one is Mohican Viburnum, and it's one of the Viburnum lantana. And as we promote, water-wise landscapes, this is one of the viburnums that is drought tolerant. And I think leather leaf might be a common name too. But Mohican Viburnum, should I say hundreds? There's maybe hundreds of viburnums out there. Not all of them are drought tolerant. Some are more drought tolerant than others. So, and there's so many of them, so you really want to look and check and ask around which ones are drought tolerant if you're looking at that water-wise landscape. But this particular one, Mohican, is a great one for drought tolerance, and it's blooming very prettily right now here in May.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly. All right, Fred, not drought. Actually, your first picture is a puddle.
Oh, well, that's exciting.
And the viewer actually sent in this picture and says they're seeing these kinds of eroded areas in parks that then have standing water in them.
Oh.
And they're wondering what they can do about it. They're in those homeowner association sorts of areas because, of course, they're concerned about mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes, sure.
Right.
Sure, and I can see a little bit of water in the bottom of that one. You know, probably the best thing to do is if it's a homeowners association, talk to the management of that association. If it's a city park, I guess I would call the city maintenance department because they can fill holes like that. I think what we're seeing now is a mosquito wiggler, an immature mosquito. You know, they can go through and fill holes like that. They can drain swamps, they drain the low areas, you know, and then there are a number of products, some that contain Bacillus thuringiensis, the BT, it's called BTI, that they can use to control those wigglers that we just saw. So there are things that can be done, but they either need to get hold of the homeowners management team or the city maintenance group and have those areas taken care of.
Excellent. Thank you, Fred. Rock, this is a viewer in Omaha, and they have a patch of brown turf, a whole patch, along the wall of their garage facing west. He has a picture. He's wondering, actually, if this is too much sunlight reflecting off the garage wall. Is it the overhang? Is it a burn? What is this?
You know, this is a really interesting picture to me, and ultimately I'm going to give it to Fred. First thing I would say is they've got the lawn way too close to the house, and so basically I would move it out, put in a planting bed, put some shrubs that will tolerate that west exposure, right? And but the western exposure, the way that almost looks linear, the location to the house, I'm pretty confident this is clover or Banks mite, so I'm going to flip it over to Fred.
Yeah, Rock, that looks sort of like classic clover mite type of damage. What I would love to know from the viewer is, in fact, are they seeing a lot of tiny reddish insects coming into the house, climbing up the wall, because that would be diagnostic that it's clover mites. So probably the way to, let's assume it's clover mites if they're seeing those mites. Probably just do a foundation spray. So go up the wall, 3 or 4 feet, go out from another 3 or 4 feet, and use a product like bifenthrin. It's a really good miticide, and it should at least take care of them. But what happens is that the mites overwinter right there next to the foundation, and then as their population expands, they move out and they kill the turf. Rock and I have seen this in the past. Kelly, you said this a number of years ago.
Yeah.
So it actually came from Columbus.
All right, thanks, guys, and get rid of that turf strip too close to
Yeah,
the
that's
Definitely.
That needs to go.
All right, Amy, this is a viewer. We don't know where this one is,
Okay.
but he is concerned about a euonymus that actually, it's dwarf-winged euonymus, or one of them, and he has cut this down and is seeing these darkened areas in the stump and wondering, is this a disease of some sort, or what is it exactly?
That discoloration is most likely the start of an interior canker. A lot of our woodies, that wood inside that heartwood is not alive anymore. It's dead tissue, and it's a great opportunity if we have any wounds, cuts into that branch, into that trunk, the fungal pathogens will move in there and they'll start colonizing that heartwood. It doesn't affect the quality of the tree or the woody plant. It does reduce the integrity of the tree, and so it makes it a lot more subjected to wind breaks and different components like that. Very common to see those discolorations. There isn't really anything you can do about it. Since you have cut that part off of that woody plant, you just dispose it as normal and just go on your merry little way. But it's just the start of heart rot.
All right, so rejuvenation is probably what they've done correctly. All right, Kelly, this viewer is in Buffalo County. They had Beautyberry, which we've also had in Lincoln, and it looks actually like that. They're wondering, is it actually dead or just delayed? What do we think is going on here?
Well, time will tell on whether it's actually dead or delayed. So, as with most things, we're telling people to wait till about June 1st before they give up on something. But this is a Beautyberry, which is Calicarpa, and they're only hardy to zone 5 if you have the right species. So, yeah, it's not uncommon for these to die all the way down to the ground and then shoot up growth from the base. So just give it a little bit of time here. Typically, we tell people late May, June before you give up. Chances are it died to the ground this winter, and so just watch for some of that new growth from the base. And I guess if you don't, and then prune it back to where that new growth is starting on the plant. If you don't get any new growth, then it's a goner.
Excellent, thanks, Kelly. We're having several of these, Fred, and I think you answered one on another show. It's yet another autumn blaze maple, yet another frost crack. This person is saying, however, now they're seeing small black winged insects in the cracks of this tree as opposed to something grub-like, which I think our last viewer said.
Yeah, you know, these are all secondary invaders.
Right.
You know, that when the tree is that badly injured, there's that much damage, there's probably not a lot that one can do with it.
Right.
And, you know, so these are secondary invaders that are coming in to do their job as decomposers to break down that tissue. So I think it's probably time to start over with that one. I mean, I love autumn blaze. That's what I have in my landscape, but they are susceptible.
Well, and you have the spots for it, not construction soil. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Rock, this is a Lincoln viewer who has an evergreen, great big pine in actually pretty good condition. And he says grass won't grow under it. I think our viewers can actually see the dead spot under there. He's wondering if it's a problem with pH, is it too shaded, 7 feet off the ground for the lowest branches, and if it's pH, he wonders what he can do about it.
Okay, this is, if you look, you know, that's kind of overrated, that the pH under pines is so, call it causing all turf death. But, so the turf under there, if you look at the side of that tree, it's got some burn in it. And if you look underneath the front side of all those trees, except for the redbud on the left, it's a great story to tell, you're not seeing an injury. So that's winter desiccation injury. Probably, you know, pines can suck moisture out of the soil well into the season, right? I mean, well beyond, you know, and deciduous trees drop their leaves and there's no pump to pull it up through the leaves, right? But pines can do that. And in this case, it was pulling up the moisture and it reduced the moisture underneath the tree. Plus, when you look at the burn, there were some severe, very cold winds that occurred this year. So that turf just died on that side of the tree because, and the tree actually showed some fairly serious injury because it was winter desiccation. And once again, you look at the redbud, which there was plenty of water under it, there was no death under that. So it's not due to the pine, it's more due to the pine's ability to take water long after the turf is done. So maybe turf not underneath the trees unless you're dead set on that, and we put a little mulch ring and we zone plants like we're supposed to, but that yard was a lot of trees and a lot of turf and there may not be anything you can do, but right now you're looking at replanting.
All right, thank you, Rock. All right, Amy, this is a viewer, we also are not sure where this one is from,
Okay.
but they have Asian pears, which are great to eat, but they also have a leaf disease of some sort on their Asian pears, and they're wondering, is this something that we have seen, and can we help them with diagnostics on this?
I've looked at this one a couple times, was having a little difficulty with it. There is a scab that will go after Asian pear, and that's what I'm kind of leaning toward, which is a fungal disease. There isn't anything you can do at this point in time for it. That's going to be a fungicide application at bud break. So that would have been a month ago is when we would have made that application. It's probably not going to progress too much further, depending on how the weather is. If we get really cool and wet again, it may progress a little bit longer. Once we warm up, it should slow down. The pear should be just fine for the year. You'll just have some discoloration of the leaves, and it should produce fruit, and it should be okay.
All right, thank you, Amy. Kelly, this is an Omaha viewer, and he has a scarlet oak that he absolutely loves. Very concerned that it was not leafing out, and he actually asked us about this on Monday.
Okay.
So any advice for him?
Okay, well, I guess be patient. I know a lot of the oaks have been fairly late to leaf out this year, so be patient. The crack on the trunk itself is probably a little bit more of a concern. It looks a little bit more deeper and more extensive than what we would call a frost crack.
Right.
Because frost cracks, you know, they open up during winter and then they close up during the growing season and kind of open up the following winter. But this one looks a little bit deeper. I always tell people I wish we could x-ray the tree and see what's really going on inside there. And typically we can't. So you just want to monitor that crack. You know, you want to monitor the tree. If you see a lot of young twigs or branches starting to die, that might be an indication there's a little more going on internally in that tree. But it's definitely something to watch and to monitor and keep track of. And I guess if the tree doesn't leaf out by June 1st, then you've solved your problem because it'll be time to cut it down. But in the cut part of that, it looked like there was a lot of green tissue. You could see quite a bit of green tissue. So it's probably just late in leafing out, and will still leaf out, but monitor that crack in that area.
Excellent. They have cedar waxwings on their cherries in their orchard, wondering if they should spray. So I'm thinking they're wanting to spray the cherries, but they don't want to hurt the waxwings.
Well, you know, cedar waxwings are so migratory. They're here for a few days and then they're gone. I mean, I get them in my landscape every year. So, you know, I would be tempted to wait because I'm not sure where we are, but till we get past petal drop, we don't want to be doing any spraying anyway.
Right.
So, you know, I would just wait a few days or a day or two and they'll be gone.
Right, they're a 48-hour bird.
Yeah, they are.
All right, thank you. Rock, this is an Oxford viewer that has buffalo grass. Wants to know a chemical that is approved for weeds in newly seeded buffalo grass lawn, and oh, by the way, has grapes.
And he didn't describe it, you know, there's some missing points here. What weeds are we going after? Are we going after crabgrass, pre-emergent? Are we going after, you know, dandelions post-emergent? I'm not really, there's not a one-size-fits-all on that answer, and unfortunately we were going to have to ask him to give us him or her, to give us a little bit more details, because that's one that Brock's going to pass on until he knows a little bit more.
All right, excellent. Amy, this is the Shickley viewer, and we've actually talked about shelf fungus in ash, maybe even this particular one. She says the fungus is on a very substantially strong branch.
Okay.
And can you comment on whether that is really true?
We'll see those shelf fungi developing on tree branches, trunks, throughout our landscape. And typically when we start seeing those shelf fungi, that's the reproductive structure of that fungus. And so the picture we saw, my first picture of the night with euonymus with the discoloration on the inside, that fruiting structure is because of that. There has been a fungi eating at that heartwood, and now it's pushing its way out to reproduce. When we start seeing those shelf fungi, it is a very good indication that the integrity of that tree and that branch is very poor. That typically means it's hollow on the inside. So it's this time that you need to bring an arborist in to take a look, and they can really assess the integrity of that tree as a whole and what branches need to be cut out. If you don't want to hire an arborist, you can do some things on your own. To determine if it's hollow, you can take a long drill bit and drill it in there. And typically, if you're going to hit at a hollow spot, it's just going to like anything through a stud. All of a sudden, that drill bit's going to go zoom right through. And it's a real good indication, oh, it's hollow. And typically, when you start looking at it, there's only about maybe 3 to 4 inches of wood. And that's the part of the tree that's still alive that's holding that entire branch up. So you're better off getting rid of it before we get a lot more of those summer thunderstorms and that branch falling onto a house, a car, or even your garden and your precious landscape plants.
All right, thank you, Amy. This is a Sterling viewer, Kelly, who is wondering why the rhubarb is going to seed so quickly and producing so much seed.
Okay, and the weird weather.
Yeah.
That's the best answer,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
if it's, you know, a plant that's been there and it's always produced normally in the past. That's called bolting, and probably the sudden heat, it could even be the high winds. Probably the best thing to do is to cut out that stalk. Don't let the flower go to seed or anything like that. It may shoot up other ones, it may not. You could harvest maybe a little bit this year, but sometimes it affects the quality of the rhubarb. But it's really something triggered it environmentally, and there's nothing you can really do about it now. Hope it doesn't do it next year.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Thanks for staying with us on Backyard Farmer. Coming up soon, we'll hear from Sarah again about getting your vegetable garden going, and we'll see what Gladys brought in this week. You can still phone in your questions by dialing 1-800-676-5446. While you're doing that, we'll start the lightning round. Remember, these 2 chairs are playing for North Platte. Those 2 chairs are playing for Nebraska City. We vote next week when we announce the winners. Are you ready, Kelly?
Oh, I'm first? Okay.
Yes.
Nebraska City, right?
Is Raywood ash a good choice for a landscape tree?
No, I would not plant ash.
And if you were not going to plant that, what would you plant?
Oh gosh, there's many kinds: Kentucky coffee tree, ginkgo, oaks, bur oak. There's a nice long list.
An Omaha viewer wants to know how to get their painted arum started.
Okay, well, you could plant from seed, maybe get some from a friend, planting in the fall.
All right. This viewer needs to move tulips for a concrete patio now.
Well, if you have to do it now, then just dig up a big clump, get as much soil as you can, maintain the foliage, and then water it well after you move it.
Will emerald arborvitae grow in large pots?
No, not very well.
Are creosote ties acceptable around gardens with edible plants?
If best not to have them around there. Some research has been done that there's not too much leaching, but better safe than sorry.
All right, nice job, because you are finished. Excellent. All right, Pat, Amy.
I'll go
ready?
for it. The tally card is throwing me off a little bit tonight.
Okay, downy mildew in impatiens has been projected to be a problem. Is that something that we're seeing, or should people be concerned?
Not a big concern here. We usually are not wet enough for downy mildew.
All right. Will rose rosette spread from one knockout rose to the rest in a 20-foot long hedge?
Yes, it's insect transmitted, so you got to control the insects. So get some sticky cards out there and look for the insect pest.
All right. This is a viewer who had yellow ooze in his cucumbers last year, doesn't want to have it again, and wonders whether that would be an insect or a disease.
If it was in the cucumber, I've never seen that before. If it was in the stem, I would lead for bacterial blight, which is transmitted by the cucumber beetle or corn rootworm beetle.
All right. A viewer has mushrooms all the way along the root of one old crabapple. Is this an indicator of issues?
It just indicates those roots are decaying. If you don't like them, just go out and mow them off.
All right. Brown soft streaks in onions. What are those?
That is actually a fungal disease called botrytis, and it actually enters through the top when the foliage is still on, and it occurs when in storage.
All right.
So you got to make sure your onions are nice and dry and keep the circulation in your storage.
Excellent. You ready, Rock?
Sure.
We have a viewer wondering whether it is too late to aerify.
No.
We have a viewer wondering whether they should both aerify and power rake, and if so, this time of year.
Only if they have a heavy thatch layer and a bluegrass lawn. If they've got fescue, no need to power rake.
All right. Is it okay to go ahead and till the turf in an area where you want to grow vegetables? Is that the best way to get ready for a vegetable garden?
You're going to get some turf grow back unless you deep till, so I'm going to spray with Roundup beforehand or smother it with something like dirt and see what recovers. But the best bet is to throw some Roundup on there and then till.
All right. A viewer had weed and feed applied accidentally in an area where they want to organically garden.
Federal certification says that it's got to go 3 years without any synthetic herbicides. So I would say if they want to follow those guidelines, that's definitely not organic for 3 years. But it's up to them if they're growing it for health reasons or whatever. Most of the things break down within a year's time. I'd wait a year.
All right. What kind of turf should be planted in sandy soil around the Calamus River at Burwell?
Some people say that buffalo grass won't grow in sandy soil, and that's not true. So I'm actually going to say, based on where the location is, that they look into buffalo grass as a possibility. And if I can expand on that just real quickly, is that the reason they say that is when you go into the sand hills, you only see buffalo grass down in the little trenches where there's some siltation, right? You don't see it up on the side of the hill where the more characteristic species that are, sand drop seed and stuff. But that doesn't mean it won't grow in sand. It's just that sand drop seed's more competitive in sand. So that's an old myth. Buffalo grass will grow in sand.
Excellent. You ready, Fred?
I'm ready.
All right. We have local garden centers who are talking about a chemical available for EAB, emerald ash borer. What would that be? And do we have the beastie yet?
Well, it's not here. It's very, very close, and it actually may be here in Nebraska. And it's probably imidacloprid would be the ones that most commonly use as systemic.
All right. We've talked about the spray window being close to past for apples and other fruit trees. What happens after petal drop? Is there another spray window for people who want to spray?
For insects, I assume.
Right.
Yeah, it depends on which insect you're dealing with, but typically you put your first cover spray on shortly after petal drop, and then another one every 10 days, 2 weeks.
All right. Is it safe to plant this year in beds where the cicada wasps lived last year?
Sure.
Okay. How do you control millipedes around the house?
Sticky traps.
What is a bagworm spray for arborvitae, and when do you use it?
bifenthrin, and you want to put it on before the little bags are 1/2 inch long.
All right, excellent. Nice job all. Plant of the week, Kelly.
Oh, plant of the week. I better pull it up.
You guys all did a pretty nice job.
We all got 5.
We all got 5.
You were on your best behavior.
And if they vote on Twitter based on a pretty face, Fred and I are pretty much out to lunch.
Okay, Kelly, what did
Oh,
Gladys bring us this
gorgeous.
Well,
week?
she brought us a couple of spring bloomers, obviously. The little white ones. Let's see if you can see them.
Yep.
Which way am I going?
There they are.
There we go. This is a variegated Solomon seal, or Polygonatum. I think you can see the little teeny tiny white flowers. This is one that grows vigorously in shade, in even deep shade, part shade to deep shade, and really cute little blossoms that hang down, and those will change over to kind of a little green. It looks like a berry. I don't think it's technically a berry, but you will have that fruit then hanging down for the rest of the year. And they're kind of a nice arching, stay ornamental. That foliage stays very ornamental all season. So Solomon seal, Polygonatum. If you need something in the shade, this is a nice something to contrast with the hostas. And the flower is one of the parrot tulips. Okay, tulips. The parrot tulips are characterized kind of by that, they look kind of feathery leaves, scalloped edges, kind of open, loose, very pretty. These are hybridized. And this is a very pretty deep purple color. And Gladys did want me to remind everybody, she put a note here that once these finish blooming on the tulips and the spring flowering bulbs, try to leave that foliage as long as you can, because that's replenishing stored food in the bulb for next year's blossoms.
All right, thanks as always to Gladys.
Yes.
Next picture is yours, Fred, and this is an interesting one. It's actually a viewer that has a very long, very old lilac hedge. She's wondering about pruning it down to about 4 feet, and the reason we threw it to you is to talk about the ash lilac borer in it and how you would actually manage this better.
Right. You wouldn't want to just cut it down to 4 feet. That's the wrong way to deal with lilacs. So, it's important to clean out those kind of hedges because the older canes are so susceptible to ash lilac borer and to the borer damage. So what you want to do is go in and take out about 1/3 of the canes, and you can take out about 1/3 of them. You take out the largest ones, and you can do that for 3 years, and you've regenerated the plant. Kelly, do you sort of agree with that?
Yes, that 1/3 rule is the ideal way to go. Sometimes if it's a really old overgrown shrub, it's kind of tough to do. So I know a lot of people sometimes give up, and probably when the plant's dormant, not this time of the year, they will renovate completely and take it to the ground. But if you can do that 1/3, 1/3, that is a good way to treat it.
And when do you do that?
After flowering.
Yeah.
As soon as it gets
Fine.
on flower.
So in
So
sometime.
in the next few weeks.
Okay, in the next couple weeks.
All right, Rock, this is an Omaha viewer. Backyard faces east with 2 large trees. They're having an issue. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got the wrong one up there. This is not turf. This would be a pod, and these people are wondering what that is. It's all over their shrubs and how they keep it from coming back next year.
That's honeyvine milkweed. Milkweed, it's a great place for larvae of monarch butterfly to hang out, and also it's a native, especially to the eastern United States. Unfortunately, honeyvine milkweed is extremely invasive. Each pod will produce anywhere from 10 to 50 seeds. They have a very high germination rate, and rumor has it once you get it, you've got it forever. It's extremely difficult to control. It doesn't pull readily. Even the glove of death that Zach and I talk about all the time isn't very effective. If they've got it all over, it's going to take a long, it's a tough row to hoe. Moving works, but I wish there's no herbicide, there's no magic formula. It's going to be hand pulling, and don't let them pod like that, because those things are going to fly all over. The birds eat the seed, you're going to have them all over your yard.
All right. Amy, this is a viewer that had to cut off a branch off a white birch, and this is in Howells, Nebraska. Now they're seeing pink slime coming out of the wound. They're spraying with dormant oil every spring and then spraying twice with dormant oil, but they're wondering about the pink slime and the spray program with dormant oil.
I'm not understanding the need of the dormant oil since it's a deciduous tree. Usually we're spraying those dormant oils on our conifers and evergreens to help reduce winter desiccation issues such as this year when we had so much desiccation. Now the pink ooze. Now that is just the natural weeping of the tree, and why it's pink is because some of our fungi friends have found it as a wonderful sugar source. And we have several of them that sporulate pink in coloration. And so the pink coloration does not indicate that the tree is sick or anything like that. The pink is a secondary and natural weeping of the tree does occur. And sometimes we see that when we have an excess of water. Sometimes the trees will do it because they're stressed. Nothing to worry about. Don't paint it, don't do anything. And I would really like to wonder why you're spraying a dormant spray on a deciduous tree. And if you're willing to email us your reasoning behind that, we'd be interested to know why.
Thank you, Amy. All right, Kelly, this is an ID question from a viewer who saw this plant in flower and wondered if we could simply help them out with what it is.
Okay, well, I smiled when I saw this picture because it reminded me of Don Steiniger. He'd always go, oh, that's one of those Prunus. It is definitely in the genus Prunus. Based on the blossoms, probably lean towards a choke cherry. So
One of our native plants.
yeah, one
Good
of our
for the
native
birds.
plants. Definitely a Prunus.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, Fred, last picture for you this week. We had one last week about curling brown asparagus. This is another viewer, same issue. But they're also seeing little stickers stuck up and down the spears, and they've seen some insects spotted with red and yellow color feeding on the tops. 4-year-old, and this is near Malcolm, so the patch is 4 years old.
There we are. This is asparagus beetle damage, and this is a common asparagus beetle. And so let's address the stickers things first. Okay, so the beetle, they overwinter as adults, and so they're very early in the spring. And those little stickers are in fact eggs. So the females are laying their eggs up on the spears, and that's what we're seeing sticking off. Okay, so, and the reason they're curved is because the beetles will actually go in and feed on one side of the asparagus spear, and then as it grows, it bends over because one side has been damaged, the other side keeps growing, and that causes them to bend and then discolor. In terms of control, sanitation in the fall is important. They overwinter as adults, and then you can use something like a neem oil or permethrin or 7 will control them quite nicely. But it's always important to look at the post-harvest interval. Make sure that you wait the proper time before harvesting and consuming the asparagus.
Excellent. Thanks, Fred. All right, Rock, this is the Omaha backyard picture. Sorry, viewers. Backyard faces east, 2 large trees. They don't think it's previous scrub damage. They want to know winter kill, drought, or a fungus, and everybody else's turf looks great.
Yeah, we see this happen. It's an unfortunate thing. I'm going to say this is probably winter kill based on the way how spotty it is. It's probably a fescue, or maybe even in Omaha we see a fair amount of predominantly perennial ryegrass lawns. They were very prone to winter kill this year. It probably was predisposed to it. It looked like maybe it went into the winter a little bit short. And the last thing you want to do is mow short going into the winter. We like it to be a little bit taller. We like it to catch snow if we have any. We didn't have any last year. And even if you get winter desiccation because of the exposed leaves, at least you get a boundary layer, or what we call a protective layer, from the taller turf. So they're going to have to reseed that area. The recovery, I think it's fairly evident to them as well that they're going to have to. But identifying it was probably winter kill. We're not going to see grub damage now. It would have recovered by now, or it would have needed to be, and you would have seen something much less widespread. There's a lot of reasons to believe it's not grub damage, not fungus, because of the nature of how it does. So that's probably definitely a more widespread environmental thing, like winter kill.
All right, thank you, Rock. This is, gosh, your final picture on this one, Amy, is a viewer who has this sort of interesting thing going on in the tree here. She's wondering, it looks an awful lot like another shelf fungus.
It is exactly another shelf fungus. This is what they look like when they are fruiting off of the tree. Discussed it earlier, usually indicates a degradation of the integrity of the tree. Need to get it checked out. An interesting note, I know for a box elder, there's some individuals that will actually eat the shelf fungus. They will make a tea and make a soup out of it. I imagine it'd be fairly tough, but there are people in the state that do use shelf fungus as an edible gourmet food.
All right, so keep their eye on that one as
Yes.
well. All right. Kelly, your final picture of the evening. This is a Northwest Iowa viewer. They have a pear, transplanted patent pear. In 2011, sustained an injury to the south-facing side, and then a branch snapped off, and they're wondering, what is possible for rehabilitation on that particular tree.
Okay, well it's a pretty good size wound, but it still looks like it's fairly close to the surface. So, and if the tree is otherwise healthy, hopefully it'll grow callus tissue, kind of that, like when you have a pruning, you do a pruning, you get that donut ring. So I wouldn't do anything with it. Don't treat it with any kind of a paint or a spray or a pruning wound spray or anything like that. Research has shown that actually can interfere with the tree's own natural response to sending chemicals to that wound and kind of closing it off and preventing any decay from going into the rest of the tree. So right now I just leave it as it is, and I would watch to see if you're getting some healthy callus around the edges. And eventually it may be fine in the long run, but probably a good thing to keep an eye on too, so it doesn't look like there's some decay getting in there.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Well, we have a number of announcements tonight of cool things going on in the gardening world, beginning with our very first one, which is the Lincoln Iris Society Annual Show, May 10th, 1 to 4:30, Southeast Community College. Number is on the screen for more information. Our second one is the West Potawatomi Master Gardeners Plant Sale, May 10th at the Iowa School for the Deaf. And again, we have a number on the screen. Our third one is the Lincoln Parks and Recreation is waking up the beds on May 10th in the Sunken Gardens. Time to plant sunken. The Garden Club of Lincoln is meeting on May 12th at 6 p.m. at Culler Middle School. Number is on the screen for that one as well. Our next one is Spring in Maxwell Arboretum here on East Campus, May 15th at 4:30 in the afternoon. And I think our final one here is the annual Greater Omaha Iris Society Show, May 17th and 18th at Lauritsen Gardens in Omaha. Again, we have a number on the screen. So lots and lots of things going on. All right, a little picture round, or a question round here, guys. This is a Washington County viewer in rural Washington County. They've had pine wilt. They've removed several mature trees. They have several small ones left. They want to know what treatment could possibly keep them safe.
Unlike emerald ash borer that we have some controls for, there's really nothing one can do for pine wilt. We're going to lose probably 80% of our Scotch pines before this thing is done.
All right.
But the one big thing viewers need to keep in mind is if the tree is healthy and thriving, typically we don't see pine wilt come into it.
Right.
The beetles are attracted to the stress tree. So
Right.
if you're making sure your tree is maintaining good health
Good point.
And making sure it's getting watered, you will stage off pine wilt for some time.
Perhaps.
It's an option, but just make sure those trees are healthy.
All right.
Good point.
Rock, this is a Shadron viewer who wants to know how to get rid of sand grass. They're saying sand grass, not sand burrs.
I'm thinking grassy sandbur,
Okay.
more than likely, and pre-emergent.
Did you make that up?
No, grassy sandbur is actually a species. Really? You're going to question me? So grassy sandbur is a tenacious weed. It germinates later than crabgrass. It's actually one of the latest warm season annual grasses we have, and it needs a higher rate, not meaning that you double up the rate of what you're using, but that breaks down in the soil. So you want it to put it on as late as physically possible. Generally, we're looking at a late May if you want to target sandbur with any of the common garden store variety products that contain pendimethalin. Scott's Halts is one example, but the active ingredient is pendimethalin. Does a pretty good job. Make sure it gets watered in, and make sure you put it on late enough. Check soil temperatures. It's going to pop when we hit soil temperatures 60 plus for multiple days in a row.
All right, thank you, Rock. Amy, this is a York viewer that has blue spruce about 15 feet tall on an acreage. Several of the trees are browning from the inside out. Is that disease or is that natural needle drop?
It's natural needle drop. As our blue spruces get older, they're going to start shading in those inside needles and they're going to start falling. Plus, evergreens never hold on to their needles forever. So some of them will drop after 3 years, 5 years, 10, 15, it varies. So nothing to really be concerned about as long as the outer needles of the tree are still looking nice and healthy and it's still shooting off new growth, your spruces are just fine.
All right, thank you, Amy. This is a viewer, again, we don't know where this one is, Kelly, but they have a daughter getting married.
Okay.
She would like white hydrangeas, and her mother, I assume, wants to know if she could purchase hydrangeas, get them planted, and have enough flowers by August 3rd to satisfy the bride.
I don't think you'll satisfy the bride. That'd be pretty tough to do. Hopefully, maybe you can find a friend that has a late blooming hydrangea. So many of them bloom early in the spring anyway. So I wouldn't rely on that.
Okay, all right, and she's probably after Annabelle hydrangea, I would think. Okay, all right, Fred, this is a viewer who wants to know about treating a paper birch for possible birch leaf miner.
Oh,
Is there something that would be both safe and beneficial and wouldn't harm birds, pets, or the environment?
well, I think the way I would approach it is I would use one of the systemics like imidacloprid. So you could put that around the base of the tree, and it would be taken up by the tree and translocated into the leaves, where it would control the miners.
All right,
So
excellent.
imidacloprid.
Imidacloprid. This is a Firth viewer, Rock, who has algae on their pond. We actually had a discussion. These guys both have ponds. Returns every year, growing in clumps, solid across the pond, so they can't fish. They want to know how to treat the algae.
If they can catch it before it blooms, and I'm assuming it's string algae, they can use barley bales. And there are several people in the state that have barley bales. You can get it online, and it's got to be free floating. It's got to be loose, so you put it in some sort of netting, and it releases something. People say it's hydrogen peroxide. That's not really been proven to be effective by itself. So there's something going on organically in that, and it seems to work extremely well. We did a little bit of a study here on a lot of golf course ponds and got great string algae control with barley bales. So look around, you'll probably find it. If they really are that curious, have them send an email to BYF and we can give them a couple of sources.
Excellent, thank you, Rock. We have about 20 seconds, Amy. What do you know about Volutella blight in Pachysandra? This is an Omaha viewer.
It's a foliar fungal disease. It's not real common, but Kevin's seen it in the clinic a couple times. I saw it when I was in the clinic. Likes a lot of moisture, so I would first manage my air circulation, reduce overhead irrigation. Push comes to shove, you can do a fungicide application, just a general broad fungicide. Probably starting here pretty soon because you're going to start seeing it showing up.
All right, thank you, Amy.